Raise your hand if you have social media. Wow, that's almost everybody. Now, raise your hand if you have ever looked at your feed and felt left out or lonely. Yeah, I know, quite a bit. Well, you're not alone. Many people, especially teenagers, struggle with feelings of loneliness due to social media usage. A study published by the University of Pittsburgh found that people who use social media heavily, which is 2 hours or more a day, reported feeling isolated 2 times more than the people who only use social media for half an hour a day or less. And depression can stem from these feelings of loneliness. Because of social media, teenage depression is at an all-time high. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology said that teenage depression has risen almost 60% between the years 2009 and 2017. This directly correlates with the rise in social media. And with this rise in depression comes a rise in suicide. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death in ages 10 to 24 years old globally, right behind accidents, such as car crashes. But enough of the harrowing statistics. I have 2 true stories. Let me begin with Rebecca's. Rebecca Anningnello was a student at Grand Island High School. There, she played violin in her school orchestra, and she was a member of the Grand Island Ski Club. She was a very caring girl. She loved babysitting and taking care of her pet rabbit. When she wasn't in school or taking part of the many clubs she was in, she loved spending time with her friends and family. But on December 20th, 2015, she unexpectedly took her life. She was only 14 years old. When her father reflects on her death, he said that social media definitely had a role. He said that social media creates false feelings of closeness with others, and that's how Rebecca felt. He said it was particularly painful for Rebecca when people wouldn't respond to her on social media. My second story is of Braden Speed. He was 18 when he took his life last October. He was a senior at Prosper High School. His parents describe him as charming, athletic, and sweet, with a twinkling smile and beautiful eyes. He looked a little younger than his age, but his demeanor was much more mature. And because of that, he found a safe haven in band where most of his friends were seniors. That was lost during his sophomore year, when most of his friends graduated. Throughout the rest of high school, Braden would use social media as a way to measure himself. Who had the most followers, likes, and comments were questions that mattered to him. He would spend hours on his phone looking at pictures of his friends at parties that he wasn't invited to. That was hard on him. His struggle ultimately ended because of his struggle with social isolation and the depression that stemmed from it. Unfortunately, his situation is all too common. In fact, in 1 year, almost 15 kids per every 100,000 will commit suicide. The constant interconnectedness of our world can be both a bliss and a nightmare. When social media was originally created, it was meant to bring us together, but ironically, it ended up driving us apart. This is because of one misconception about social media, that it's an alternative to face-to-face interactions. In reality, there's no substitute to in-person interactions. This is because how someone acts on social media is completely different than how they would act in person. This phenomenon is called the online disinhibition effect. This is where people are more confident online, so they post things that they normally wouldn't say in person. A recent dispute among Gayle King, Lisa Leslie, and CBS about Kobe Bryant is a prime example. Basically, Gayle King was interviewing Lisa Leslie about her friend, Kobe Bryant, and Bryant's sexual allegations came up. CBS posted a 30-second clip meant to entice viewers to watch the full interview. This clip, which was taken out of context, was only about King asking Leslie about the allegations against Bryant. Many got mad, and Gayle King received death threats and nasty comments because of this. One comment that stuck out in particular was one that said, "Cowardly, disrespectful, and classless, Gayle King. You aren't half the human being Kobe Bryant was." I think it's safe to say that the person who commented this would not have said this to Gayle King's face. So the question still remains, how are we going to solve this ever-present social media issue? When asked, researchers and psychologists say that limiting our time spent on these apps is the best way. As a teenager, I realize it's very hard to follow that advice. In addition to trying to limit our time on these apps, we can also reconsider the content of our posts. Here's a few things we can change. First of all, we want to try to avoid posting exclusive posts. A good rule of thumb is to put yourself in your followers' shoes. For example, we shouldn't post pictures where only a select few are invited. Don't get me wrong, taking pictures with friends is a great way to preserve memories, but posting them online just reminds followers that they weren't invited. The only people who need those photos were the people in attendance. Secondly, hate comments must come to an end. As mentioned before, these comments are easily recognized and quite common. For instance, these types of comments usually flare up around elections. This is because normally civilized friends are insulting each other on social media because their political views differ. Here's a few things we can do, though. We can post inspiring public events like a concert, a sports event, or even a TEDx speech. We can strive to post original ideas that foster connectivity based on shared interests. These ideas include how we can better help our world, ourselves, and our community. We can harbor positivity by posting wholesome things such as one's plants, animals, scenery, inspiring objects, books, and shows. For instance, I have a neighbor that owns 3 cats. Whenever she posts pictures or videos of them, it warms my heart and it makes my day. We need more stuff like that on social media. As I mentioned before, Braden's and Rebecca's situation is all too common. Social media users need to build people up instead of tear them down. The reason why I chose to speak on this topic is because it hit close to home. In my school, we had a recent tragedy. The boy who took his life was a senior named Lance Alep. His friends recall him as always having a smile on his face and being very joyful. And because of that, nobody saw how isolated he felt. On many days, I wonder if Lance had the benefit of a more mindful social media, then he might still be with us today. So, I ask all of you to pause before you post. Thank you.